Yeah, we started.
Hello, YouTube. Hey,
Oi.
so today we're gonna be studying First Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 to 16.
Okay.
Okay. So before I start, let's just have a word of prayer. What are you looking at?
Steve, what are you looking at, bro?
Keep going.
Just look at his face in
Unless-
real
unless-
life.
Oh, I mean to pray for you. Heavenly Father, I thank you for gathering us after a long break, and just pray that you'll use me to speak the truth that you have stored with us in the Bible. Lord, I just pray for our small group and for the other small group as well, that we'll just be able to tackle this semester head on and just continuously meet and continuously see how our walk in our faith is, and how we can help each other, and how we can all just focus our eyes on you.
Mm-hmm.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You like to breathe a lot, good sir.
What? What?
I don't know.
We pray for all of you. Anyways, so I did not have a lot of I didn't get a lot of chance to do some background info, like what came before it, and so I'm just mainly just gonna be focusing on the text itself, and yeah. So this was really difficult to find application on, so just try your best to stay with me. So for the first two verses of chapter 5, we'll be, Timothy is looking to establish some standards for how we treat our older generation, or older peoples. So in chapter 5, verse 1, do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters, with absolute purity. So these are some basic manners that I'm trying to address. He's mainly using this to address the false the false teachings in the way that the older elders in the community have been kind of acting, the ways that they're so they've been taught false teachings, and so they aren't acting according to what in Jesus' teachings. And so he's telling the people, as you speak to them, do not rebuke them harshly, for it's very difficult for especially older people to change their ways, and so you have to kind of slowly guide them through it.
Wait, so then these are the people who have fallen into the false teachings?
So there's, according to the background that I was looking at, the church there, or the community there, had a lot of people who were misinformed about what Jesus' teachings, and especially the older people. It's very difficult for them to kind of speak to them about it without attacking them, since for them it's they've been taught that and then for quite a while, and so it's harder for them to change, rather than if you speak to younger
Wait,
people.
so then in other words, people in church have been misinformed, and then he's targeting towards the older generation.
So it's very similar to the church in Ephesus, where there are false teachers who were proclaiming the wrong news about Jesus' coming, or who Jesus was. And so it's very similar here, but in this case he wants to establish kind of a standard of how you should be talking to them about it. And so you shouldn't rebuke them, say you're just basically yeah, just rebuking them and telling and just telling them straight up that they're what they're doing is wrong. You have to show them who Jesus was really, and then still treat them with love. And so this chapter also focuses a lot about elders and those older than us.
Okay.
And then he also adds to treat younger men as brothers, and also younger women as sisters. So these just along with the standards of how you should treat your brothers and sisters. But he adds that with younger women, you see here at the end of chapter 2, verse 2, with absolute purity. So in this case, it's very similar to what we've been taught how to kind of interact with the girls at church. You can talk to them, hang out with them, however you want, but be sure to set boundaries and keep accordance with it, because we should hang out with them, like love them, just as our brothers, but we need to set proper boundaries so that we don't cross them, so that our sinful nature, we won't approach the women in our lives as if we're lusting after them, or let our desires get ahead of us. And then after that, from 3 to 16, it goes on about a very specific relationship of how you should treat widows. And so it's very difficult to see application, but if you just, bear with me here. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. Verse 4, if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should first learn of all to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family, and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. So, alongside verse 1 and 2, 3 is just reassuring that if this case arises where, let's say your parents get divorced, or God forbid, your father passes away and your mother is left alone to take care of the household with you and your siblings, it is your responsibility now to take care of her, because she is going through a rough time, and she will need all the support that she can get. We will get further into detail what you can do and what the church is also instructed to do. But first and foremost, the children and grandchildren should step up and care for the mother, because she's lost her, let's say, companion in Christ, the person that she was relying on to keep her aligned with her walk with Christ. So she's a widow now. So
wait, comment down if you want, but can't a father be a widow too, or is it only applicable to mothers?
Widow, by definition, is just by the mother. But
so what happens if the mother dies?
It's a widower, I think, or something like that.
I mean, the father is the head of the household. So
I think this case is talking about
female.
It's talking about way of living. So with guys in society, they could
survive.
Earn, yes.
Okay.
If you're a widow, it's harder for you to
Gotcha.
survive. This is why it's telling you the children to take care of the widow.
Of course not sexism, obviously.
No, it's just a society.
And so for us, it's a bit more relatable, since I guess Chinese culture, it's also very similar, where we are expected to take care of our elders, and I don't know. I haven't personally felt this calling from my parents to take care of them. But if anything like this should happen, this is what Jesus calls us to. And so this is also going back to I believe it's the fifth commandment that God had for us, to honor our mother and father. And so Timothy is writing this in reference to that. And so if this tragedy should happen to your mother, you should take care of her and to honor her and to show your faith to God, to repay the debt that your mother and father have done for you, and care for them just as much as they cared for you as when you were younger. So it's kind of a reverse relationship. Following verse 5. The widow who is really in need and left all alone puts her hope in God and continues night and day to pray and to ask God for help. So for the widow in this scenario, which we cannot specifically relate to, they should be still seeking God with all of their strength and ability. and they should still be continuously living their life for God, but also seeking for help from, if they have kids, from their offspring, and also for seeking help from the church. Verse 6. Still ready. Verse 6. But the widow who lives for pleasure is dead, even while she lives. So this is kind of putting describing the two differences between what a widow can do. One who is godly and fears God and also still lives for Him, or one who lives for pleasure and believes that they have no more responsibilities since they are released from their marriage agreement.
Wait, can you repeat that real quick? Because my head's going everywhere. Ask God for help.
Verse 6. But the widow who lives for pleasure is dead, even while she lives.
I am mad dumb.
Huh?
That was verse 5. My goodness. I was looking at verse 4. I was like, where is this saying that she should ask the church for help and that she should... Anyways, now I see where it is. Sorry about that. Verse 6?
Yeah. So 5 and 6 are just like taking the two ends and describing what the widow in this situation, if they become a widow, what this person can look like. Either they follow God or they live for their own pleasures and is free from all responsibility and basically lets go of everything and lets their flesh, what is it? No, their
flesh. Take over.
Their flesh take. I was using a different word, but yeah, basically that. So yes, and so for this type of person, spiritually they are dead inside, even though they live. They stop living for God, and so spiritually they are dead. And then verse 7, give the people these instructions too, so that no one may be open to blame. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he denies the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So again, 7, this is to reiterate what he's been saying, what Timothy's been saying, for verse 1 all the way to 6. So these are the standards that we should go by in helping the people in our family, our immediate family. And then later on he'll explain how, as a church, we assist people who fall into these circumstances. And so he calls us that if you are a child of a widow, then you should assist your mother in her time of need, because God has called you to in the 5th commandment, and also such that this is the way that Christians should behave, and he means this to tell everyone, so because these instructions should be universal to all Christians, that you should know that this should be the right way of going about things, instead of just ignoring your family and leaving it up to the church to take care of, or anyone else, because this is your immediate family, and you should honor your mother and father. And then he even goes on to verse 8 to even call them out on it if they do not provide for their family. Because for if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he denies the faith and is worse than unbeliever. Because God has called us to love one another, and if we can't do it in your own, if you can't do it on your mother's time of need, then when will you do it? You're actively denying what Jesus has set the standard for, and you're also worse than an unbeliever, because even people who don't believe in God and don't believe in Jesus, they even take care of their elderly in age. And so if you can't do it, what kind of a Christian are you? So he's calling. This is a testament of faith for you.
7 to 8, right?
7 to 8, yes.
Okay.
More an 8.
Yeah,
More an 8.
okay.
7 is describing the standard at which describing the standard of which we are called to. And 8 is just calling them out on it. And this is why you should be doing it.
Oh wait, unbeliever is a word.
Yeah.
Unbelieve is not.
Unbeliever.
Unbeliever.
Unbelieve is not a word though.
Yeah.
Unbeliever is a word.
Unbeliever.
Sorry.
Nice, okay. Alright, continuing on. Verse 9. No widow may be put on the list for widows unless she is over 60, has been faithful to her husband, and is well known for her good deeds such as bringing up children, showing hospitality, washing the feet of the saints, helping those in trouble, and devoting herself to all kinds of good deeds. So obviously this doesn't apply to us. Because we, first and foremost, we aren't.
Are you assuming my...
Excuse me? Say that again? So this mainly pertaining to women. And but these are in their times the regulations set forth so that they could distinguish who to help first. And so this list of kind of, it seems like qualifications to be on the list. These are just people who are basically people who the church should be helping first. And so what you'll see later on, and what kind of Timothy advocates for is this not necessarily hierarchy, but an order of procedure of if the immediate family, first, if there is a problem with a family member, the immediate family should assist them. Should do everything in its power to help its own family first. Second, after that, if the immediate family is unable to assist its own to help its own family members, then you bring it up to the church, where the church is should be responsible to help those in need. In this case, the widows. And so this sort of a list is just who to help first and who is the most needy. And it's what it's describing in the list in verse 9 and 10 also correlates with verse 5. This is the godly widow who is still keeping her eyes on God and praying day and night and doing the good deeds and living her life for Christ. Though she has been put in this circumstance and put to the test, the church should outreach and do everything in its power to assist them. Any questions?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you say verse 9 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
Paul's saying that there is a type of hierarchy of who to help them first?
It's not exactly a hierarchy. It's it's like a procedure.
Oh, procedure. Okay, yeah.
So, if let's say your mother is divorced and she becomes a widow, and so maybe she gets old enough that she can't remarry, and so she can't have more kids, she can't remarry, and so you are left as the immediate family to take care of her.
Okay.
But let's say, God forbid, something happens to you, and you are unable to take care of her, the immediate family.
And the church.
Then the church is responsible to assist them. Then she'll be put on this sort of list of people to assist. And these are regulations of people who they should be helping. These are the people who believe in God and also who believe in God and have put their lives forth for Christ, and so they're the people that the church should be assisting, not what they describe in verse 6, the widow who lives for pleasure and is dead spiritually.
Nice.
Because dead spiritually. You're gonna help a dead person?
Huh?
No, I'm kidding.
Dead spiritually. Spiritually dead.
Verse 11. As for younger widows, so people who don't necessarily fit the criteria of the list. They aren't like the first priority. As for younger widows, do not put them on such a list, for when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ, they want to marry. Thus they bring judgment on themselves because they have broken their first pledge. And so, before I get into it, I will confess, I don't quite exactly know what this first pledge means. I have a hunch, but I didn't have enough time to kind of look deeper into it. But what this means, what this verse is saying is, do not put the younger widows, the widows who are still young and who can remarry, basically. People who still have a chance to remarry and start and then become a wife again. Do not put them on the list because they still have a chance to remarry. And don't put them on the list also because they have still time to prove their faith. So if you put them on, it's like if you put them on the list too early, I guess you could say, they might change their mind and change their ways, and to lead them in, they might follow their sensual desires and chase after another husband and take their eyes off of God. So what this means. So they're not the people who are in immediate not exactly danger, but
trouble.
Like they're not the most urgent people that need assistance as widows, because they can always remarry. And and for Timothy, I believe he's specifically also not putting the age like that, such that younger women can't, is because for these women who are widows now, it is also a test for their faith, so that this will prove if you are truly faithful in God, or will you continually follow God and let Him guide your life. And so perhaps if God wants her to remarry, then it will happen. But if she herself decides, I would want to marry, I am, like, let's say, sexually driven, she'll find herself another husband and disobey God and like stop following God, basically. It's really bad wording, but
Okay.
do you understand?
Yeah, I sort of understand.
No.
But then your wording is really
Yeah, it's sorry.
jumbled up, but
Can
I understand.
Can you summarize it real quick?
You want me to summarize it?
Summarize it, just that
So
part.
for younger widows, it's for Timothy. I think he's trying to kind of not put them on a list, also because that it can be a test for them. God might be using her marriage as a form of test, as a testament of faith, basically, to see if she stays loyal to God, or if she walks away and decides to take things in her own hands.
Wait, say, so you're saying Timothy's telling them not to put.
No. This is what, like, the interpretation of, like,
the reasoning behind why.
because she can still remarry. There's there's another chance for her. There may be another chance for her to get remarried, and so because of that, we shouldn't help. The church isn't urgently called to help her, because there is a chance that she can get remarried, and so the husband will be the assistant to her. But it's up to her, her faith. Will she trust God and let Him provide for her, or will she chase after another husband herself?
Wait, so then that sort of puts in a weird area where you're saying that if she were to get a new husband, you're almost saying it as if it's sort of like a taboo, or almost like guaranteeing if she does get a new husband, then her faith might go away.
No.
Cause that's what you're.
I did not say that. I am saying so. So one of the things on the list says she's over 60. So if you've ever taken a biology course, you know that women's body their sexual organs, they deteriorate. So over a certain age, they literally can't have children anymore. Although men is different, we produce semen until the day we die. So biologically speaking,
Very nice.
there's a certain time where like women, they can get remarried, but you know, I don't want to be a little messed up here, but would you think that your grandmother would want to remarry?
Possible, but no.
Would anyone want to be?
It's possible, but
I'm not trying to be messed up here.
Well, yeah, if she got money. I'm not saying.
Even if they if she got money, really.
I would say I would. I mean,
So,
So it's unreasonable for an elderly person to remarry.
mhm.
For the obvious reasons where she can't bear children anymore, and so she's barren. And the other reason, there are also other reasons, but I won't get into those.
why you gotta say it like that?
So,
So-
what is the list?
So, in my interpret,
Is it a
Interpretation.
list?
a list of like kind of people of priority. So, it doesn't sound like that strict, but like, people the church should look to assist, first.
Wait, it says it right here, doesn't it?
Say-
On the list of widows, so it's a list of widows.
Are you
No,
ready?
but what does that mean?
Yo, so
What-
this-
what do you
People
do with
to the widows who are in
This is mad helpful. Ready? So what was the list of widows? The list of widows was a list of Christian women who had no family. The church supported them and gave them special work to do in ministering to other Christians.
ministry?
Yes, so.
Because I don't know if you touched on this. So I think the reason why Timothy
Very
Mhm.
nice.
is telling the
No,
church.
it's Paul.
Yes, Paul writing to Timothy. So
Mhm.
the reason why Paul is instructing Timothy to
Mhm.
instruct the people of the church. Happy? You like it that way?
Okay.
Not to put the younger one is
Uh-huh.
because when you go on the list, you're pledging in a way to God that you're gonna live for Him, right? And so I'm seeing the first pledge as the dedication to Christ. You could verse 11 and then verse 12 talks
Mhm.
about the sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ. So when this happens, they will break the first pledge. They say, "Oh, I'm not going to marry again. I'm going to live my life for God by doing His ministry." And it's a lot harder for younger ones to do it, younger women to do it because they can, in a way, biologically get married again.
I agree with the first part. Because I think because it says you can still remarry, and still keep your eyes on God. The reason why, so I'm
No,
answering Jack.
I'm saying it's harder for them.
I'm sorry. To remarry.
No, there's always a temptation. So when one younger woman pledge to
Mhm.
live for God, and widows wise, they're saying, "Okay, I'm not gonna remarry again. Right? I'm gonna dedicate my life to God." They are a lot more tempted to get to stray away from that pledge than older women. Does that make sense? Because younger ones, they can still get married, right? So that
Mhm.
temptation, that desire is always still there.
Mm.
And when they pledge their life to Christ, they're saying, "I will live for you now only," they are a lot more tempted to go the other way. And that's why and that's why in verse 12 is warning that you shouldn't put them on list because there's a good chance that they will break their first pledge to God.
So that's your interpretation of what the first pledge is?
Yes. Because I'm just like trying to connect it to verse 11.
I had a different thought of first pledge, but I can't be sure.
What were you thinking for
So-
first pledge?
I thought we were still answering Jackie's.
Oh.
Because he still doesn't get, what is it, 11 and 12? Why, so for younger women, the reason why they're not on the list, what I think is so that, this is also time to kind of sort of test the widow's faith. So if they're still young and in the age that, within the age that they can still remarry, they can still keep their eyes on and follow on God and follow Him, and trust that he will provide for them another husband, or they would let their sensual desires overcome them and want to marry and take it into their own hands instead of following God. That's what I thought it was.
So then basically,
So, do you follow God and trust that he will bring you a husband, or do you ignore God and say that I'll do it myself?
So
It's a
what do you mean
testament.
by-
It's a testament of their faith.
What do you mean by you do it yourself? Like you go out there looking for one,
Yeah, instead of
or
trusting
you
that
just
God.
continue to follow God, and then trust that God will
I
bring
mean,
someone to you.
can't you
provide.
technically go out there and trust in God and still try and find one who's
Yeah, you can.
devoted to God?
I'm saying it's a testament of faith. Will they still stay faithful to God?
Yeah.
And how does that connect to the list?
Hmm?
How does that connect to the list?
Because if they're put on the list, because God, not God. The interpretation I had was that they're not put on the list prior to that is because they can still remarry, and this is a testament of their faith. If you put them on the list, then it's not a test anymore. They'll just be put in the assistance of the church. Whether they marry or not doesn't matter.
Okay. So, what is the list to you that you're interpreting as? The list as the church helping you, right?
You guys are
So
not.
basically, the list is the list of older Christian women, the widows who the church is helping, and in
Yes.
his case, the order that they're gonna help them in.
Kind of the people who they care for first.
Yeah, but I just don't understand. So if they were put on the list,
Mm-hmm.
if the younger women are put on the list, how does that?
I'm saying why they are not on the list.
It's because he's saying it's because it's a testament to their faith.
Which I'm not.
It's a trial for them.
If they're to be put on the list, they're gonna have assistance from the church, but
And
then
they
they can
can't
still
get
get they can still get remarried. So that's the temptation.
It's like do you know the freedom argument? It's like you have to have freedom to be able to
Yeah.
choose in order.
So you're saying if they're put on the list, they can no longer be.
There's no freedom. Yeah.
They can no longer be
Yeah.
married.
No, it's that
what?
it wouldn't matter anymore. Like I'm saying it's a testament of their faith. They can choose to still follow God, and to still walk on the journey, and still this is for a way for people to see if the widow is still faithful to God, or that they will be overcome by their sensual desires, and stray away from God.
Okay. So you're saying if the widows were to be helped out by the church, there's a good chance that the widow. You're no longer testing the widow. The widow would just sort of be like forced to
Yeah.
follow God because the church is helping them out, so
Yeah.
they can't
So it's
reject it. Okay, that's what you're trying to say. Okay.
Why did I take so long?
Yeah, like I said.
Hate you all.
Yeah, it's the.
Oh boy. Wait, do you not get it?
Not yet, but
You don't agree with it?
I mean, I don't really
That's-
see it as.
yeah, it's
just
like very
text.
weak. That connection.
Oof.
I didn't
Okay.
say that, okay?
Okay.
I didn't say that.
You know what? It's mad weak.
Okay.
Yeah, let him finish teaching. Talk about it afterwards.
Anyway, just to recap 11 and 12. As for younger widows, do not put them on such a list, for when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ, they want to marry. Thus, they bring judgment on themselves, so they get to choose. And this would be their testament of faith, because they have broken their first pledge if they stray away from God. Is it still following? Right? Question? Still following?
Yeah, I'm just processing.
Processing
Okay.
through? Besides, they get into the habit of being idle and going about from house to house, and not only do they become idlers, but also gossip and busybodies, saying things they ought not to. And so this is further kind of not exactly evidence, but like reason why they shouldn't be put on the list. So that, because if you put them in the church, they wouldn't have anything else to do if they were younger. So this is still focusing on younger women. Verse 14. So I counsel younger widows to marry, to have children, to manage their homes, and to give the enemy no opportunity for slander. So he's actually calling out the widows that there's still hope that God provides, and that you should still seek him and trust the Lord, that he will bring you another husband so that you can raise a family. That's what you're called to do. And so this wouldn't be possible if the younger widows were put on the list.
Dang, yo, some burn.
Huh?
I'm tossing it this way, okay? You too. This way. Verse 15. Some have in fact already turned away from Satan. If any, so these are people who have, for whatever reason, they, in their time of, I guess, grief that the husband has left them, they've already turned away from God and have followed Satan. They've completely given up on God.
Wait, so in verse 11, he says, widowers, don't put them on the list because they're gonna want to marry, right? Which is basically choosing fleshly desires over Christ. And then he says, I'm going to counsel them to do the fleshly desires.
No. So, it's very similar to emotions. God has naturally given us emotions for women. He's saying their purpose is that when they're younger, they should look to marry. And it's the way that they do it.
Yeah, so I am.
If they take it into their own hands and look to marry. It's the way you do it. It's if you follow God and trust him, then things can go well. If you stray away from him, things go sour.
Well, then why does he counsel them? Why doesn't he just say leave it up to God?
Because they don't know how to go about it. When you say trust to God, what do you do? When I say you build a car, what do? You don't just automatically poof a car. There's logistics to it. Like there are certain instructions that you ought to be taught to do.
Wait, hold on. All right, now what I'm hearing from this is trust in God and things will all go well for you.
That's literally just what I didn't. I literally said don't do.
No, like before the counsel part. Because I understand the counsel part because, say trust in God, what are you going to do, right? So what I'm saying is it's as if he's saying that, okay, let me counsel you into what trust in God means, right, and how to do it, and then it will go well for you.
I say trust in God very generally. It's a testament of faith, whether you follow God or not. If you follow God, you'll trust God. It will provide for you, but you will also work to seek God, and then follow the instructions. And this is where the counseling comes in. There will be people who want the best for you, who knows what God wants for the women in the church. Like generally speaking, not exactly, but and can suggest and advise them what to do and to how to start a proper family.
Yeah, okay. So just going back to verse 11. So you were saying how they should not be put on the list because it's sort of like a test for them to see if they continue to follow God or not follow.
Or stray away.
Stray away. Yeah, and how does that relate in terms of marriage?
Because so this is they're sensual. They have God has given them let's see, the way to describe it. So
well, just going back to like you said it's like a testimony part where correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm trying to what I'm getting from what you're saying is that the first way is they should trust God. That God will provide them another husband, right? Is that what you said?
If they continue to follow God, because they will look to marry,
And the second way is they find a husband on their own.
Second one. Oh no, yes. So the second part is if they choose to let their sensual desires, and follow that instead of God. If I want to take life in my own hands or follow God, it's only those two.
Yeah, but just going back to Roger's point,
Uh-huh.
then, because
Yes.
Because
Mm-hmm.
Paul is telling them to get married in verse
Yes.
14. So in a way, Paul is telling them, okay, trust God, and you should also get married too.
You can get married either way. Married either way.
But then the second way, what I'm saying is, it sounds as if getting married and like taking it into your own hands, like trying to find a husband, is bad. What?
Exactly.
That's what I'm getting from your
That's what I
teacher.
was trying to say before.
It only goes bad if you lose sight of God.
How do you lose sight of God during that moment?
When you follow your fleshly desire, you don't see the boundaries anymore. You just go by what you feel, and it's like fleshly desires.
It doesn't sound like he's telling them how to marry, but like, so if you like sentence structure, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this thing, but you like, if you would like put a synonym, counsel is like advise, right?
Yes, it is.
So if you would change it to advise, so I advise younger women to marry, not how to marry, which means he advises them to marry. He doesn't tell them how they should marry, like by trusting in God, blah blah blah. He just said you should
Wait.
marry.
I think it says.
Counsel. So I don't know. I'm just.
It doesn't sound like he's telling them how, like, you know, follow God.
No, because, like, I'm trying to describe it in a way that you can understand, because it's not working right now. So I think it's very similar to, like, you know why God gave us, like, emotions? It's not that they're bad for us. It's if we use it properly, it's good for us.
Yes.
There's a purpose for it to guide our lives. But the problem comes if you only base your life on emotions, and instead of God. So it's like this. God.
Oh, I got
These
it.
women, they are meant to marry. They should marry. It's good for them to marry. He's not saying it's wrong, but it's the way that they go about it. Do they follow God? Still live their lives as Christian, seek God, and then trust that there will be a guy, and then God will provide for them, and they will remarry? Or do they say, my life sucks, I don't trust in God, I'm going to find my own man, by myself, without God?
Wait, but then it becomes important to know what the first pledge is, because
Yes,
we
that's-
don't know
that's
what
the
we're
question
breaking
that-
then.
And I'm interpreting first pledge as dedication to Christ. In verse 11.
Which still works.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Because if you-
interpret it as staying faithful to their husband.
But the husband is dead.
Yeah, bro.
I mean, you can still faithful
So-
after death.
So who else can they be faithful to? God.
No, because so I'm interpreting. It makes a lot of sense if the
Flirt.
their first pledge is dedication to Christ. Because then, if they fully commit their lives to, if they were put on the list, they will have to fully commit their lives to God. And then, if they were to marry, that would be breaking the pledge.
I mean, it says their dedication, verse 11, their dedication to Christ. I think that might be referencing to the pledge. This is very similar.
And that's why Paul is telling them to go get married first. Before. Wait, no. That's why Paul is telling them not to be put on the list so they could get married.
Yes.
And also keep that dedication to
I'm
God.
gonna go search up what this first pledge
Okay.
is.
You don't have to leave.
Hey,
No,
calm
I don't
down.
have internet.
No, you sit here.
I don't have internet.
No, you don't sit up. Yeah, continue. Yeah, we spent like 20 minutes on this.
Which is good now that you guys hopefully understand
Can you
it.
please summarize verse 1 to 13? No, I'm just kidding.
It's
Man. So, 1 and 2 verses 1 and 2 is to set a standard of how you should treat the people in your lives. And he was particularly writing about the elderly, and so to treat them well as if you're father and mother. And so following this would also lead back to the fifth commandment, to honor your mother and father. Treat them as if they were your mother and father, and with care, and instead of rebuking, even if they are wrong. And to also treat your younger men and younger women as brothers and sisters, and to also set clear boundaries as to stay pure. It's verse 1 and 2.
I have a question. Did you
Yes.
finish
No.
your lesson?
You
didn't-
still have
Oh, I didn't
verse
even finish.
16.
You didn't do
You're
15.
trolling me.
You didn't do
Oh my-
15
you
or
told me to
16.
you told me to
No,
summarize.
He did
I was
verse
like,
15.
yeah.
Oh,
I didn't finish.
Oh,
Oh, I thought I
Who's-
finished because
who's
you
on
told me to
verse
summarize.
15?
no, because I was just kidding when I was saying, summarize.
You're trolling me.
Bro, I was actually, I was like, wait, hold on, he's summarizing now. Why?
You're trolling me.
Sorry,
I
bro.
hate you. Where was I? So, is there any, do you,
15 and 16.
no, I still need to clear up 11 and 12
Wait, what? Why?
before to make sure you guys got it.
No, we already got it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You sure?
No.
Yeah, I sort of got it.
Yeah, Roger. What do you understand?
I sort of get your interpretation of it.
I don't.
Which one? Which part?
It's a little
Talk to
hard
me.
for me to agree with it a little bit.
Where you say, because it doesn't seem to mention anywhere where, Paul is advising them to have faith in God, and that's how they will have a new husband.
Yeah.
It doesn't mention anywhere about faith or anything. It just says their dedication.
So I think the dedication and pledge is very similar in that the pledge is for Christ, and so Jesus Christ should be the number one person, in your life, and so you shouldn't break that pledge. You should always be following him, and so if you are still following him, living a Christian life, even though you are a widow, Paul is saying that God's intention for women is so that they can marry. And so even if you are a widow, you are still young and of age so that you can remarry. So if you follow God, live your life righteously, God will provide for you. You will get remarried. And this is in contrast to, again, verse 6. But the widow who lives for pleasure and is dead even while she lives. If you choose to not follow God, to break your pledge and take God and Jesus down from the number one spot and put the husband and seek to marry and put your husband as the number one spot and just follow your desires, then that becomes a problem. But this wasn't, like verse 11 and 12 wasn't supposed to be about that. It was just an explanation of why you shouldn't put younger widows into the list. Because there's still a chance for them to be remarried.
Think of them as nuns.
Oh my.
You can't.
They dedicated. No, alright. Right. I'm so confused at what is is the list to. Okay, I'm seeing the list as two different things right now. There's two different ways of seeing it.
Uh-huh.
The list says, if you're put on the list, the church will help you with your needs, and that's the first interpretation of the list. The second interpretation of the list is, if you're put on the list, it means that you are planning to do ministry for the church.
Seems like the first one from verse 16.
I took it from the first one, but the list wasn't. Again, the list isn't that strict. It's not like you have to follow these in like word for word in order to help people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a general way like the church prioritizes people to help, because you can imagine there's way more people that need help than there's enough people to care for them.
Mm-hmm.
Way more patients than nurses. I'm getting to that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have an order of helping people. And so if you don't need to help certain people, if they can help themselves, just don't put them on the list. These are the younger widows that they can still help themselves. God will provide for them if they seek him. And sorry, I realized Paul doesn't necessarily write that he instructs how to marry. It's just to provide the point of why they're still not on the list. So verses 13 and 14. So this is saying, if these younger women were on the list, what would happen? 13. They would get into the habit of being idle, going out from house to house, and only become idlers. They wouldn't be doing anything productive. They wouldn't be sort of building God's kingdom. And then they would also gossip and busybody and do things they ought not to.
But it's also a weird transition from 14 to 15.
14. So I counsel younger women, widows to marry. So this is saying you are not on the list because.
But then why does he
You
talk
should-
about 15 right afterwards?
I counsel the marriage.
To give the enemy no opportunity.
I'm just.
Some
interpreting
have,
the
in
whole
fact, he's telling them this. There is still an opportunity. There's still an opportunity for you to start a family. In 14, okay. 15 is the same thing as 12 and 6. There are people who stop following God and have already turned to follow Satan.
What does that mean?
Basically,
So
they stop having God as their number one, and they start to look for marriages themselves.
No, I don't know why I'm seeing this as I'm seeing verse 9 to 15 as widows in ministry.
Why?
This is some really good
No.
description.
Just hear me out. Like why I'm interpreting this way. Okay?
Sure.
So right now I'm interpreting the list as serving God's kingdom, ministry work, right? And in verse 9 and 10 is including.
So wait. The list. I'm gonna have to say no.
Yeah, just hear my interpretation.
Oh, okay,
right?
okay.
Because
Sure,
so
sure,
I'm saying
sure.
like this is the way I'm perceiving it, and I can see the other point too. So I'm seeing the list as doing God's ministry work, right? And that's why in verse 9 and 10 is listing a bunch of these traits for the older widow, and if these older widows have these type of traits, they should be put into a list of serving God's ministry, right? And for the younger ones who want to also, in a way, do God's ministry, first, you shouldn't. Paul is telling them that I don't advise that you put them onto a list because they're still young. When they go into a list, when they are put into a list, they are basically dedicating the whole entire life to God, to Christ, and no one else. So they wouldn't be marrying at all. So this is why I said the example of priests and nuns.
Okay then.
Right, and since they're young, and if they're put on a list, they have a good chance of breaking the pledge. So the pledge of living for God only, right? And when they break that pledge, they will prioritize somebody else other than God,
Okay.
and that is why they will turn to towards Satan, right? And they wouldn't be following God anymore. And this is why Paul is saying, don't put them on the list and just advise them to get married.
So you're saying you want the widows who are on the list to become nuns?
No. I'm saying when the widows are put on the list, they are in a way dedicating their whole entire life to God now, and no one else.
But then look at 16.
What was 16?
Doesn't it connect with saying how the list is the widows on the list are the ones that are helped?
Can I get to 16, please? 16 was supposed to tie everything together.
Say again.
'Cause
Say
Are
again.
you-
The
so-
widows on the list are supposed to be helped, the ones in need.
Yeah. This
So-
was the-
Help, not help.
Oh no. This is no longer talking about the list.
Why not?
It doesn't say list.
But it's
Wait. I think Steven should
let me just finish it.
finish it
So
real
that's an
quick.
interesting interpretation, but for obvious reasons, I did not decide to focus on that. So these are very.
Oh, it makes so much sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it
So the
does.
list.
automatically shot down.
So the reason why there's a list for the church to help, and not just to put in service, is because these are people who can't help themselves. These are people who did not have children, so they can't take care of them. They have no immediate family, so that they can take care of the widow, and she's a widow, so husband's not there. They have no kids, and she's too old to have kids or to remarry. And so this is why the church helps her, because there isn't anyone else who will help her, who is what is it called? There isn't anyone else who should help her, because I guess they're not immediate family or anything, and so the church steps in. So, for you had a question, Roger. You had a question on 15. Some had in fact already turned away from follow Satan. You
He had a question on 16.
No,
No,
he
15.
No. I told him 16
Yeah,
for
yeah,
his
yeah.
listing.
Yeah.
Because I'm just seeing it as verse 9 to 15. It's not really talking about assistance wise. I'm just seeing it as requirements for the widow to enter into ministry.
You're trolling.
Well, why?
I'm not trolling because if you think about it, why are widows that are over, why are the requirements for widows that are over 60 to be put onto the list have to have these type of traits? Why can't it just be any widow?
Because they're godly women.
Okay, godly women. So the church can only help godly women.
No, priority. He's a
Because no,
prioritize.
it's like
Prioritize?
prioritize. It's like
To help godly women.
Yes.
First.
because otherwise you would have a bunch of random people and who you are uncertain of their faith of. So back to verse 6. But widow who lived their lives for pleasure and is dead spiritually while even though she lives. So you can have random people, or you could do the people, or you can help the people who you obviously know have putting their lives forward to build God's kingdom and to serve God. Because there are people who, again, these connect verse 6, 12, and 15. Some have in fact already turned away and followed Satan. These are people who have turned away from God.
Yeah, because then one of the traits for the older widow is such as bringing up children. That means that these widows have children who can take care of them.
Oh, I always thought like this is like nursery and stuff.
Oh, nursery. Okay, I'm seeing more as like actual like having kids.
Oh my.
So if they're already having kids and
no.
it says that the kids should help them out first,
You think
the widows don't.
You think people can have kids over 60?
No, I'm saying that they live a life of already having the reputation. of
Oh,
raising
they
their
already
kids.
had kids.
Yeah, they already have kids.
Because if they already had kids, then the
Then
kids should help them. Yeah.
So why should they be put on the list?
Well, they don't need to. It says is well known for good deeds, such as.
yeah, such as
No, that doesn't mean they need to have it though. It's an example.
We're getting into logistics. Okay, let me just cut it. All right, let me just get to 16 because everything will make a lot more sense afterwards.
I hope so.
Verse 16. If any woman who is a believer has widows in her family, she should send help. She should help them and not let the church be burdened with them, so that the church can help those widows who are really in need. So this is tying back to the list. Why there's a list is to help the people who are really in need first, because there's only a certain number of people the church can feasibly help without being overwhelmed. And also kind of goes back to the idea of like the procedure of things, where if you have children who are old enough to help you if you become a widow, for women, you should help. The children should help you, and so take care of you instead of putting the widow at the church, in the church, and having the church take care of her. It should be your responsibility.
Why
And
does it mention only women?
as a widow?
No. Widow who's a believer has widows.
No, if any woman who's a believer.
No, any woman.
It's.
Is this
I think
something
it's. I feel like it's just like specifically calling out women. But verse 3 it does say, give proper recognition to those who are really in need. And then 4, if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should first learn to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents. For this is pleasing to God.
Wait, so why?
It's
Why
everyone,
change
but
it?
it's specifically.
I think for like the men during that time, they already were required to take care of the widow in their family. So maybe Paul is saying it to the women because the women may think, oh, it's not their role to take care of the widow in the family. It's sort of like the guy's job to do it. And Paul's saying, no, you do it too.
I don't want to get interpretations on why it's only women.
Yeah, why is it
It's
only
not
women?
it's not the big idea you should focus on.
I mean, the way I thought about it was, I like how you said no interpretations, but I'm just already giving you my interpretation.
it's fine to have interpretations, just don't focus on the wrong things. This is like really small and you're
It's
taking
minor
over the
details.
entire.
It's minor
So then
details.
what I thought was, this, if any woman who is a believer, I already assumed that he was talking about her on the standpoint that she is one of the women on the list who is a widow.
Wait, say that again?
Huh?
What?
This woman, if any woman who is a believer,
Uh-huh.
I just automatically assumed that she was on the list of widows. That doesn't always have to be the
Who
case.
has widows in it? So this is someone outside the
Yeah,
list.
yeah. So a widow who has a widow.
What the
Why wouldn't it say
What?
widow?
No,
Why wouldn't it
No,
mention
right?
widow then?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we're going
No,
over
right.
little details.
So these are instructions to help help the church body. But first, before bringing everything to the church, you should resolve everything and try to help people in your immediate family first before bringing problems to the church.
Yes.
And so these things brings everything, to me, 16 brings everything into perspective. Why this thing is set up. Why the list is there. It's to help the women. Like, we don't need to help you, but you can still help yourself if you follow God. But if you stray away, that's up to you. That's up to your faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing as the freedom argument for me. It's like, you can't, if they are put on the list, then, well, you're stuck in church. Whoopsies, you can't remarry. Because you have a bunch of other obligations.
But you put on a list, you can't be married? You don't have an
Well,
option?
yeah,
to be
I'm
married?
fairly sure you can, but it's like it's
That sounds like being a nun
no,
to me.
because the reason why you would be put on the church is so that the church can support you,
Yes.
because no one else can normally for other
Yes.
women. But if you get married, then you have a family, you can support yourself. Why would
Yeah.
you would be taken off the list? Which doesn't make any sense. Just don't be on the list in the first place.
I like that interpretation a lot better.
You didn't sound very accepting
No, because
20 minutes ago.
that's a little different than.
Yeah, it was a little different from what I was hearing.
Different, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. Is it just me? Because
Bro,
whatever
I
you
swear,
said,
I had to
like
repeat
20 minutes
so
ago,
many.
was different from what you said now.
Cut the tip, rewind.
Cut the tip. Cut the what? Cut the
Tape.
tip.
Oh, I said.
Do that.
Anyways, any other questions?
We drew you a bunch of questions. Do you know how long this video is?
And I don't think you need to
Amazing.
sum it up. I don't
He
think. Okay, good.
No, I still need to go applications because apparently I don't think you guys got anything.
Oh, it's been an hour.
Yeah, it's been over an hour.
It's okay. I have no
Great
school
start.
tomorrow. No school tomorrow.
Please start. I have
I
school
have
tomorrow.
school tomorrow, guys. Come on.
9 a.m. gym.
I'm not
Oof.
going to that. What the heck?
Yes, you are. We're doing it at 9 a.m.
Is this what's application?
Application. Basically, verse 1 and 2. Treat your elders.
They're going through all this. First one, two.
Treat older men as if they were your father, and treat older women as if they were a mother with respect, and to not rebuke them or to exhort them. To like harass them. Don't harass them with anything. Treat them with respect. And treat younger men and younger women as brothers and sisters in Christ. But for women, with absolute purity. So this is, again, setting boundaries so that you know what you should be doing. Don't let there be unnecessary sexual desires floating about.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah, all of you may get married.
Indians?
I don't know. To us, if anyone, so this is if anyone in your family becomes a widow, you should help them. But I don't think anyone here has, or unless someone needs your mom. But
Thanks, bro.
oh wait, I thought they were married. Wait,
No.
I'm trolling. Okay, I'm sorry.
You're not trolling.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It doesn't hurt at all. I don't know why you're pointing at me, bro.
Because
This guy-
because
Yeah,
you
This
I
guy's
actually
messed
didn't know.
up.
I'm
This guy's
sorry. I'm
messed
sorry.
up.
I'm sorry.
Um,
I didn't know.
No, I
Sorry.
take absolute no offense to that.
because you were saying as him. I was like,
I-
are you forgetting
I am
somebody?
sure that you are taking care of your,
Yeah, you
your
should
mom.
do this to him because I don't know why you
no,
point
no.
at me.
The
Oh,
reason why I
Amazingly.
pointed at you was because he said that I'm sure there's nobody here with like widows in life, and I'm like, is he forgetting somebody here, or does he not
No,
know?
man.
So I'm not saying.
Now I know.
I'm glad for pointing me out. You know, thank you. bro.
I'm not trying to like
Yeah,
be
yeah,
offensive.
So you know
or
what to do
anything,
now.
I'm
You know
just
what to do
saying.
now.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
Do I counsel
yeah,
about
no.
marriage?
Every time you need help, right here, bro. Set the 5.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
We done? You got me.
And then I don't know. This is just fun for me because I didn't really realize it until like I read 16. It's like before you start bringing issues to the church, you should try to resolve it in your family first. If it is out of your power or out of your control, then bring it to the church, because they have problems of their own to deal with. Their hands full.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, fun. That's about it.
Well, I want to agree with like problems wise.
Hmm?
Like if you have
Not
it says like cure as in like physical assistance.
Yeah, not exactly problems, but like if you can fix it in your family first, and you don't have to bring it to the church, because the church has its own things and other people to take care of as well. Try and do this within the family, but if not, then bring it to the church.
Okay.
Sorry, the wording was off. All right,
That didn't
that's
sound very
about
sincere.
it. Bye, YouTube.
I was gonna take a while.